Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's staff chat. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Priscilla Andrews. I'm the clinical manager here at the Cancer Wellness Center. The staff chat series was designed as a way for those of you in the Cancer Wellness Center community to hear a discussion between two professionals talking about issues of common concern for people impacted by a cancer diagnosis. And I am very pleased to have with me here today. It may have taken a little bit of convincing. A little bit, to have here today our clinical director, Megan McMahon. Megan, thanks so much for being here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here today talking with you about body image, body esteem issues. I think obviously such a concern for many people within the cancer community. I just want to start off by just finding out from you, kind of what the people that I have on here. Of course, it's because there's some interest that they have in the topic that we're discussing, and I'm curious, where your interest in issues around body image and body esteem came from.
Sure. Well, within our work at the Cancer Wellness Center, I think, I actually have in my previous working life, I've been with the Cancer Wellness Center for 19 years now. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, in my earlier career, actually worked with on an inpatient eating disorders unit. And so have a history of work with body image, body dysmorphia, and all that goes along with that. But then flash forward to my work at the Cancer Wellness Center, which has really been through most of my career, primarily focused on working with couples. And it time and time again would come out of my work with couples, so much of their physical connection being impacted by the body changes that happen post-cancer treatment, cancer surgery, and really recognizing in my work with both couples and individuals at Cancer Wellness Center how common of a need it was to have this addressed. And it's not something that the medical community was necessarily talking about or actively working on. So that our work here at the center, as it often evolves, comes out of the need for those services to be met.
Yeah. Well, and I think something that you said in the beginning when you were talking about being on the eating disorder clinic just kind of stuck in my brain, which is that idea of working around body image and body dysmorphia. And I think that's one of the challenges I think I find within the cancer community is and I think with the cancer experience in general is it's not just about having a distorted thought and we're going to get rid of that distorted thought, because for some people within the cancer experience, the issue that they have is an actual change to their body, that their body is different than it was before. I'm curious, you've already kind of hinted at this, but what are some of the concerns and some of the issues that you've seen related to body image over the course of your work?
Yeah, and I think the way in which we really see that difference when we're talking about people who are dealing with their body changes post-cancer treatment is that there's this added and additional sort of complex layer of that the changes to our bodies that happen as the result of cancer treatment or of our cancer surgery becomes then this constant reminder, right? It's sort of like we feel different in our bodies, but in addition to that, we're sort of faced every day with something that is this reminder of what we've been through. And it can be very triggering and very re-traumatizing to the experience of having had to go through for years to come, right? I mean, certainly immediately post-surgery or as you're adjusting to life back after cancer treatment, but for years to come, some of those things that remain, that are every time we look in the mirror reminded of how our life was altered in that way. And so much of the work, I think the way it differs, the work we do in this building with the people we see, it really is about how to integrate those body changes into a way that are respecting and taking into consideration the emotional impact of that cancer diagnosis over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I literally just met with a woman who's preparing mentally for a mastectomy, and part of the conversation was about nipple sparing during that procedure, and feeling like I don't want them anymore because they're going to remind me of what I don't have.
Right.
Like if I have them and I can't feel them, what is that going to be like for me? So I think it's such a complexity of knowing you're going to be living with something permanently that can't help but remind you.
And the sense of loss that people feel around those changes, around the way that their body's different now than it was before.
Yeah. Well, one of the most common things that I think I see, and I think there's such a spectrum, but I think we do work with a lot of breast cancer patients. Not that body esteem issues are just for women or men who have had breast cancer. Is I can't look at my body when I'm in the shower. I don't want to touch myself when I'm in the shower. And I don't even mean sexually, like that we could even get into as a whole nother thing, but like, I can't even bear to like wash myself because I don't want the visual, the tactile reminder.
Right. And so much of that's so often what happens for people. And so much of the work that we do when we're doing a body image group here, when we're working individually with clients here, is it's not necessarily getting people to this place of feeling even really comfortable or happy with their bodies. That may take a long time. It's helping them integrate those changes in a way that decreases that avoidant behavior. Because what often happens when we don't want to look in the mirror or we don't want to wash ourselves, that inability to sort of connect with our body in that same way is a further sense of loss and disruption, right? And is like it perpetuates that reminder. And so our work is just even at first around getting used to the idea, for lack of a better way of saying it. I wouldn't say comfortable. I would say let's get familiar with our body in this new way, so that and deal with the emotion that comes up in getting familiar with your body in this new way, so that it's not triggering every single day when you get in the shower, or every time you have to walk past a mirror, or every time you have to undress or be in a bathing suit or be intimate with your partner. Just becoming used to your body in this new way.
Because I mean, part of what I hear you speaking to is like avoidance and the sort of power of avoidance, that it can make it even more powerful,
right,
than initially experienced.
For us as mental health professionals, right, we talk about that all the time, how avoidance doesn't really it doesn't have the outcome that we set out to. Avoidance doesn't lead to us not thinking about something. Very often avoidance leaves us to getting stuck in thinking about something over and over. It rarely has the outcome it's intended.
And I will say a plug. I mean, I think the avoidance is a natural instinct or a response, is a way to try to protect oneself and try to like get to a place of feeling safe enough and just being where we're at. It's just long term, then it creates its own problems if we can't shift away from that coping strategy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we say the word avoidance, I don't want that to be taken with a negative connotation, right? I think when we avoid something, it's because it's painful, and it's our natural human instinct to avoid, to protect ourselves, right? It's that self-protection, like you said. And so being able to, sorry, do I need to shut down my email? Is that showing up?
It might be. And we can't see your screen, so you don't have to worry about that. But I did hear the friendly little chime.
Yeah, sorry about that. It is that avoidance isn't necessarily meant to be seen as pathological. It is this way of us trying to take care of ourselves, but it very rarely has that outcome. It very rarely works to take care of us. And so we have to find other ways of coping that do a better job. And that's the work that we're so often focused on doing.
And I think it's a process, right? I mean, I think it's not like, even though you might have, like, in a literal sense, ripped off the Band-Aids at some point, like, I think it's not a like one and done shot of all of a sudden, like, I look down and now I'm fine and there's no big deal, or now I've started putting lotion on or whatever. Like, it's a stepwise experience.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I'm always saying to people, right, like, we're not trying to move you to the opposite place of what you're feeling. Like, we're trying to get you just to be aware of how you're feeling, what emotional impact that's having, the thoughts about your body, the feelings about your body, and being aware of it, even though we may not change it from what it's at right away. Being aware of it is even a step towards that emotional healing, right? Because now it's not something that's sneaking up on us, right? What's so tricky about our emotional states is like when we get caught off guard by them over and over and over. And so how do we decrease the amount of getting caught off guard? Like, the more we're aware of it, the more we can start to do what we need to do to have less of a negative emotional reaction.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of what you're saying speaks to, like, the idea of distress tolerance. So, like, you know, that idea of like, what can I tolerate? And in the beginning, there may be very little distress tolerance around interacting with one's body. And so can we broaden that a little bit more so that even if it's uncomfortable, I can acclimate to it and I can tolerate it, because that can then allow that to expand more, expand more, expand more. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious because I think there is, and in some ways, I think on a societal level, I really embrace it. But I think it's more challenging in the cancer community, which is this body positivity movement. That I think goes beyond the idea of acceptance and goes to this place of like feeling really good about the body that you're in. I, of course, have my own thoughts about that within how that dovetails with cancer and body image, but I'm curious how you see that movement in society at large dovetailing with what people go through after a cancer diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you bring that up. You know, as a concept as a whole, I'm 100% in support of body positivity. I think that, you know, we've gone on too long with messages around ideal body type and what society views as beautiful and expectations. The challenges I see with that. So, you know, I don't want to, and what I'm about to say next, I don't want to dismiss what the value in body positivity.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have to be so careful of is that when something kind of gets caught up in this mainstream view, it becomes like, well, now I have to think positively about my body, and this is the healthy thing to be doing. And the reality is that, like, that's a hard place to get to. And especially for so many of the people we see here, right? Like, there is so much complex emotion behind their view of their body and what's going on post-cancer treatment, that when the expectation is now that we have this positive view of our body, it can feel very much like, well, I can't do that. So now I can't even do that. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
I can't get myself there. And, you know, we talk about it in other ways, this idea of like positive thinking and how often people will come at you. Well, you have to have a positive attitude. You have to think positive. The only way through this is to think positively. And, you know, so often that's just not a realistic thing to do. We can work towards that. We can work towards changing our view of ourselves to one that allows for other narratives, but that this idea that now suddenly we have to have this positive view, I think feels like a lot of pressure. And also, when it's not easily achievable, feels like an additional can feel like an additional failure for people, like, well,
Yeah.
I can't do that. The other thing I hear often that I think is hard for our population when we're talking about sort of like societal expectation, I hear time and time again people saying, everyone in my life is saying to me, well, why are you worried about that? Meaning whatever body image change, body concern they have. Why are you worried about that? You're just so lucky to be alive. You should be so happy to be alive. And how that then impacts, like, you start to think, well, oh my gosh, that person's right. I should be thankful to be alive.
What's wrong with me?
Why am I focused on this thing when really, like, I'm so lucky to be alive? And so often I'm working with people and, like, we can feel both those things. We can feel grateful to be alive, and we can feel grateful for the treatment that was available to us, and still be very emotionally impacted by what we went through, still be very distressed by the changes that our body has been through. And that those two, they're not related. Like, it's not one or the other. And just because you're having body image concerns or body esteem concerns, like, it doesn't mean that you're not grateful for being alive or for the other piece. And really helping people understand that, because I think the mainstream view is often, like, why is that? Like, look at this big thing you went through and focus on overcoming that versus getting, I'll often hear people say, I get caught up in, right? So,
I mean, it kind of falls into that myth of the cancer hero.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw my, like, super heavy eye roll when you mentioned positive thinking, which just still drives me crazy, because, people having a natural human response to the situation that they're in, and, the distress about being distressed, the anxiety about being anxious. And I think, that message around just, like, I think one of the things that I can encounter at times are, like, people who maybe saw themselves as, like, not being vain, like not putting an emphasis on their breasts or different parts of their body, and now they maybe are even caught off guard by how challenging it is to have their body be changed. And so I think there's a deep, like, identity crisis of, why do I care about this thing that shouldn't matter, right? There should be some higher ideal that, and I think that comes from family and friends, but I think also the medical community, not to throw the medical community under the bus, but I think there often is more of an emphasis of, like, treatment was successful. This is great, right? Like, it's that sort of, like, rah cheerleading.
You're doing great.
Like, what's your problem kind of is not maybe what's said, but implied. And so now people come out, and I think this happens in so many ways post-treatment, but certainly body image is one of them, where now they're pathologizing themselves around something that just fits into the spectrum of experience.
I hear that all the time. I hear, like, I did not think that this would bother me. I did not think, these were not things that I cared about before. These were not, so now, like, I'm just being vain. And so helping people recognize, like, there's so much more at play, that it has nothing to do with vanity, right? There's so much more at play. And, changes to our body are difficult, and especially when they're related to something that we've been through that is as complicated emotionally as going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment is. And even we can't always anticipate how we're going to feel about something, right? So if we are taking the example of women with breast cancer. Again, like you said, there are many other.
It's low-hanging fruit here.
Right. So, you know, so often I hear women saying like, I never cared about my breasts. I never cared about, like, I didn't see them. But now that they're gone, like I feel like I recognize like they were what fed my children, or they were a part of what made me a woman, and so helping them understand, like having emotional reactions. It's not just about how you look.
Yeah.
It's so often people think body concerns are about how you look. And it's so often so much deeper than that, especially for the population that we see here at Cancer Wellness.
Well, and I think going back to some of what you were talking about around what got you engaged in body image and body esteem issues with the couples work is, you know, those body changes can have a profound impact, I think, on one's experience of intimacy or one's sense of identity as a sexual being, you know, whether it's breast cancer or somebody who's had prostate surgery, you know, women who've had oophorectomies, hysterectomies, where they may be dealing with things like vaginal dryness. I mean, even thinking about somebody who's had a colostomy, you know, what is that like to not only, I think there being the level of how do I feel about my body with me alone. And then if I am in a partnered relationship, or even not even a partnered relationship, I think some of the even more complex things are, I'm not in a partner relationship. What is this going to be like for me to be intimate with somebody?
Right. And how do I explain this? And how it's such a bigger conversation. And even things like post-surgical scars, right? Those things can really impact our sexual intimacy, or our being present with somebody in a physically intimate way. Because so often, like when I'm working with couples, you know, so often we're talking about how to re-engage in physical closeness. And I mean, time and time again, I hear someone say, you know, like, I see my scars, or and like, I'm right back in being reminded. And how can I be sexual when my brain is occupied by the distressing thoughts of having just been through cancer?
I mean, it's interesting because it just makes me think. I was just listening to this podcast recently, and of course I was. If you don't know, I'm a huge podcast fan. This is me living out my fantasy of having a podcast. So thank you for joining me. And they were talking about how like our brain is really our biggest sex organ. And so like putting aside hormone changes, putting aside performance, you know, when that cognitive piece isn't there, if we're not thinking about our bodies or thinking about interacting our bodies with another person, you know, that can make even getting to the point of being physically aroused, that's just a barrier there to getting to that point.
For sure. Our brain is our number one sex organ.
There you go. I mean, I'm curious, just to stay with this for a second, like what are some of the things that you recommend for people? I mean, whether we could talk about it within the perspective of sexuality or sexual relationship, or maybe even more broadly, just anybody who is wanting to maybe not move towards that positive place, right? Because that might not be realistic to begin with, but I think like, can we neutralize?
Yeah, and that's really always my initial work, is around getting to a place of like just being aware and having less activating feelings around our body, right? We don't necessarily have to be to this positive place. And you know, I think one of the things I'm always wanting people who are going through body concerns to recognize is that like they are not alone in that. Like it is so common. It is happening for so many people who have been through cancer treatment, cancer surgery, weight changes from cancer treatment, and that it isn't, you know, like it isn't this unusual thing. So I think like starting even just with normalizing, like that's an expected part of what you're going to go through. So even just having the conversation, like even us just having the conversation today as a start, and like, we're having this conversation because this is something that is going on all the time. Like we're not having a conversation about something obscure. And then the second piece of that being really just starting to, when I'm working with somebody, starting to pay attention to their emotional reactions, because so often we're not aware of like the strong, right? We may be aware, like I don't want to look myself in the mirror. I don't want to be in a bathing suit. I don't want to be naked in front of everybody. I have all the lights off. We're not really aware of what we're telling ourselves, which is often when we drill down a little bit, like some pretty harsh language that we use and can spark some pretty strong reactions. And so really just helping people at first become aware of like, what is my narrative around my body? What am I saying to myself when I do catch myself in the mirror, when I do bathe or shower or have to take off my clothes? Like, what are the messages I'm sending to myself? And once we can kind of identify that, we can work to neutralize that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the challenge too is that going back to that idea of that kind of self-protective avoidance is that can often, I think, or more typically extend to, I'm not just avoiding the part of my body that I'm unhappy with or uncomfortable with. I'm avoiding the whole thing.
Right.
So I'm just becoming disconnected from not just the parts that are like bad, I'm going to put that in quotation marks, but I'm also going to disconnect from the parts of my body that are still functioning, that are still, helping me through my day, that I still maybe have the potential of feeling good about. So then you're just sort of stuck in this place, I think, of I'm protecting myself from these emotions and these thoughts. I'm trying not to pay attention to them. I don't want to be in this place. And now I'm stalled.
Yeah. And how quickly that one thing that we're focused on becomes our definition of ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we get that very narrowed view of ourselves.
Yes.
And so we're living in this state of being focused on that thing that we're so distressed by.
Yeah.
And it occupies so much of our brain space.
Yeah. I heard this really great analogy once, which is like, if we think about our, like a cherry pie, and we take one slice of that cherry pie, and the first bite we get a pit. And so we're like, oh my God, I spent all this time on this cherry pie and now there's a pit and the pie is ruined. And so then we become fixated on the fact that this pit made it in the pie, even if the rest of the pie could be pit free. Now all we're thinking about is this one bite of this big pie, and not even exploring, maybe even being cut off from exploring the fact that like maybe the other 7 pieces of this pie, I guess, depending on how big sizes of pie it is. But
I mean, I'm having a hard time not laughing at the fact that of course your analogy has to do with pie.
To say, I did not make this one up. This one is truly one that was handed to me.
No, it's the one that stuck for you.
Yeah, of course it did. But I think it is like that, you get fixated on that thing. And as you try, like, it's like this, like, catch-22, like I'm fixated and I don't want to be fixated. So I'm going to look away from the thing I'm fixated on, but then that keeps me engaged with the thing that I'm fixated on.
Yeah. And we all know how then that goes. Like then it's
cycles.
Just a cycle.
Yeah. Well, and I think, going back to what you were talking about around like body positivity is, I think I can understand the pushback around, I have these negative feelings about this part of my body. And like, I can't get to a place of feeling positive about other things. I can't look away from that thing that is different. And I found like part of the shift is, and I think I'm just reiterating what you said earlier, is it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, we don't have to say that this thing is not a reality. We don't need to say that it doesn't suck to not have hair. We don't have to say that it doesn't suck that you don't have breasts or don't have your real breasts or you don't have, erectile functioning, whatever it may be. But can there be something in addition to that, so you don't have to just live in that room
Right.
all the time?
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
it's not getting, it may still be getting a lot of the playtime, but it's not getting all of the playtime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, our what's playing in our brains.
Yeah.
I think when we think about how do we help move people towards that, like, I think so often I want to set that expectation, right? Of like, we're going to work on moving you out of that highly distressed space around your body into one that is less distressed, and hopefully will become less distressed even more over time. But so many of the interventions, even, I mean, if I can call it intervention, that sounds so clinical, but the ways in which we work with that here within our building are short term, right? Even the body image group that I have run, and now our one of our colleagues, Zoe, will be running. It's a 6-week group, right? It's not meant in 6 weeks' time. You're not going to go from having these strong feelings about your post-cancer body
I mean,
to,
even somebody who hasn't had cancer,
right?
that's not going to be be realistic, like,
Right.
that's not going to be
moving,
realistic.
We're not moving to the opposite end of the spectrum in 6 weeks. What we're doing is putting the foundation in place so that you can begin that work and then know how to continue that with yourself, to continue to move yourself to a place that feels less distressing. Right? Rather than this idea of like my negative body image and I'm going to have a positive body image, like, we're going to get to a place that's less distressing. That's the hope, right? And in our individual work we do here too, like, we're not doing intensive body image work for months on end. We're helping put the tools in place.
Yeah. You don't need to like get to a place where you're like embracing your scars and giving them new meaning and,
right,
saying a prayer of gratitude every time, like,
right.
That may not, maybe, I mean, that, not saying that doesn't happen.
Well,
for
that
people, or that
works
it
for some
can't.
people, and that's great. When that works, and it works, and I'm all in support of that. But when it doesn't, I don't want the message to be that there's only this one way through finding a more comfortable place with your body.
Yeah. Well, and what I really don't want is internalizing I'm a bad cancer survivor because I didn't do that.
Right. Which we hear a lot, right? And to say it out loud, people are like, well, I guess I know that's not true. But right, when you say it out loud, and you can be like, well, okay, I know that sounds silly or sounds over exaggerated, but that is actually the message that so many people sending. The what is wrong with me? Why can't I let this go? Because there are so many other really important things that I've gotten, and I need to be grateful for them. Like, yes, you can be grateful for them.
And the gratitude, I mean, I think the emphasis on gratitude, I mean, relative to body image, but I think is even extends to other things too, is that, like, if the idea of gratitude ends up leaving you in a positive, I hate that word, like in a more neutral or more grounded frame of mind, then great, go with it. I think the challenge is then that idea of gratitude becomes its own like burden.
Yeah.
And then it just,
and it's another thing. So often for people, it's another thing that they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I want to come back because you very briefly mentioned this earlier And I'm just curious to hear more of your thoughts on this, because I think one of the things that I often encounter, my guess is that you see as well, because you mentioned it, is this idea of weight gain.
Mhm.
And I think people, especially with our female population, they go through treatment. And sorry, guys, I know this can happen for you as well. There's just some hormonal things that are specific to many of the gynecologic cancers or breast cancer that women cope with, which is, they go into treatment, and then the treatment itself, or maybe secondary to treatment, they're in menopause, they're in perimenopause, and they've, especially if they're younger, they've been thrust into this. And along with that often comes weight gain. Along with that often comes, maybe not being able to manage weight in the way that one used to before. And so there's such I think there's the body image piece paired with I'm doing everything right. I'm
You gotta
exercising,
add
I'm
those.
eating, right? Yeah. I'm doing what the doctor's telling me to, and I'm not getting the results, and just sort of feeling at a loss with their body because, I think that that's one of the aspects of body changes relative to the cancer experience, that like there is this idea that like if I work hard enough, I can make it different. If I do the right thing, I can make a difference. And that can come from within. But I think like I've also had clients where like maybe they were heavier before, but they're trying to be healthier and the weight just isn't coming off. And then they get a lot of judgment from their family, maybe their spouse or their adult children, like are like, why don't you want to get healthy? Why aren't you doing these things? Like, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that presentation, that
Yeah.
experience. Presentation sounds so clinical. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
I know, like sometimes we can't step out of our own
just-
way with
yeah.
those clinical terms.
What kind of interventions would you use for that? No, but like when somebody shows up and they're dealing with this, like, I want this to be different. I feel like it should be different. Other people are telling me it should be different. I mean, I think even like the doctor's telling me to lose weight. And now not only I have to live in this body and I feel demoralized because my behavior is not having the response. And now I'm feeling bad about my body. And wherever you go, there it is.
Right. Right. And I think like, I'm glad you bring that up because it isn't just about like a lot of what we've been talking about are like post-surgical changes. And very often that body image is altered with treatment. I mean, many of the treatments cause weight gain, the deconditioning of when you're going through treatment and you can't be active in the ways you once were and you become deconditioned causes weight gain. The hormones for sure. We see it so often, people being thrust into menopause quickly and their body changes rapidly. And I think when we kind of look at body image, there are these pieces. So often the focus of like myself compared to the societal ideal is one piece of that. And I think the body positivity movement's really born out of a lot of that. There's this other piece of like myself compared to my previous self.
Yeah.
Right. And that one is an even harder to reconcile because it's so tied and deeply embedded to like our sense of identity and our sense of self. And so we lose kind of that. It's not just how we look, but it's the sense of who we are.
Yeah.
And so much of that, the weight gain and cancer treatment becomes a part of that change in identity as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is its own scar of I look in the mirror and I don't look the way I did before. And it's not because I don't have breasts. It's not because of scarring. It's, the way my face is shaped looks differently, or the clothes that I had. I mean, I think I will say like that is one of the things that I've encountered on a regular basis is I have a closet full of clothes and I go to put something on and it doesn't fit me.
Yeah.
Of course, my response is, why don't you take them out of your closet and put them in a box somewhere so that you're not being triggered every single time you go get dressed. I mean, the number
And
of
it sounds
women.
silly, I mean, it doesn't sound silly to me, but it sounds like to most people, it's like, why would my clothes, but even our clothes, the way we dress, that is a part of our identity. That's a part of how we present ourselves and how we're connected, to
Yeah.
our sense of self.
Yeah.
There was something else you were saying that maybe think of something, but no.
Yeah. Maybe it'll come back. It'll come back to you, hopefully. I mean,
Yeah.
well, and I think just to go back to that idea of the clothing just for a second is like when I've talked about that with women, sorry guys, this could count for you too. But when I've talked to people about it, it's like when I break it down, it's like, so every morning you are starting your day by going in your closet and trying something on and finding out it doesn't fit. And maybe you even felt neutral about your body going into that, but then you leave feeling like potato. And then that's how you're going to start your day. Well, no wonder you feel you've got a low mood. No wonder you feel anxious. No wonder you feel self-conscious because you're pulling on that sweater and the sweater doesn't fit the way that it used to, right? Like, I mean, I think there's sometimes these small moves that we can make that end up having, and I don't see that, like, as I was talking about this, I'm like, is that avoidance? I'm like, that's not avoidance. That's like, hey, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah. Well, and it's those things that then like highlight the changes, and anything that like on a regular basis is highlighting the changes we've been through and causing that negative emotional reaction is going to get us like back in the cycle of it.
Yeah.
We were talking about like when you look at yourself in the mirror and your face looks different, or we take for granted, I think human beings take for granted, like you get just a sense of who you are, but the way you look, and anything that alters that, like when I look in the mirror in the morning without my glasses on, because I can't see so well without my glasses, I'm like, oh, I don't look so bad. And then I put my glasses on, I'm like, oh, there's my age, or whatever, like those things that we do.
Wait. Therapists have negative self-talk?
Can you believe it?
I thought we were perfect.
I mean, no, probably not all therapists, just me. Yeah. And so it's really, our work is helping to move towards that. It's so often focused on identity and how it impacts our identity. Even the way in which we were able to use our body before and can't use our body, our sense of how when we look at our body, it's a reminder of how we can't use our body in the same way. And, it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I would just like, as I know we're finishing up, we only have a couple of minutes, but if people are listening to us and kind of recognizing like, yes, that is, I mean, I'm guessing if you're showing up to our talk or you're.
Wait, are you going to give a plug before I even can invite you to give a plug?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to do that? Am I overstepping?
No. Please plug away.
I just want to say we do a lot of work on these kinds of things here, and our therapists are well versed in body concerns. And we do have an upcoming body image group that is for people who are experiencing changes with their body related to cancer treatment or surgery, and would certainly be something, if you're interested in attending, I'd encourage you to reach out for. We also have programs, we have individual counseling, and that really recognizing like it, sometimes we just need a few sessions to get ourselves like on a path, on a different path. It doesn't have to be like a very involved and long drawn out thing.
And if people are interested in the group, what should they do?
They should reach out to either, I would say at this point, if you're new to the center, you reach out to Katie Hall.
Yeah.
And intake 847-562 4981. Do I have that right?
Like
off
it.
the
That was
top of my
good.
head?
That's
Yeah.
if we were good, we'd have like some way to like flash that number, but we don't. So 847-562-4981. There we go.
So if you've not been involved in any of our programs or services, or really more specifically, any of our clinical services like support group, counseling, I would encourage you to call Katie Hall. If you are already in a support group or already in counseling and you come to the center or do things at the center often with our clinical team, you can email directly Zoe Goldstein, who will be running the next group. So it's Z Goldstein, ZGOLDSTEIN @cancerwellness.org.
Great. Thanks for the plug. Well, Megan, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the discussion. I can't wait to have you back in here again in 2022.
Okay, yeah.
But what I can say is before Megan is back with me next month on November 17th, I am excited that Katie Salyer, a psychologist, a colleague from the community and a former coworker from the Cancer Wellness Center, will be joining me from 12:15 to 1 to talk about cancer and PTSD. So consider joining us then. Thanks again.
That'll be good.
Megan.
We love Katie.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on Zoom, on Facebook, and thank you to those of you viewing this on YouTube. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.